Order up.
All right, welcome back to Overproof. This week on the show, I have Zara Madrusan. Zara is the founder of just a few businesses. We have the Everleigh in Melbourne, Heartbreaker, Everleigh Bottling Co., Connie's, Navy Strength Ice Co., Bar Margaux, and the list keeps going. Albie's Record Bar, Bartenders Choice Consultancy. Also the co-writer of Madrusan Cocktail Companion and A Spot at the Bar book. Now, have I missed anything?
No, that's a lot.
It's hard to keep it all in your head, I'm sure. Yeah. I doubt that we'll have time to touch on everything today, but we'll get through what we can. So you moved to Melbourne from London. What you told me was on a whim. You went from studying theatre and performance, and then within a decade you were running multiple venues. What was it about that first experience at the Everleigh that changed your path from theatre and into hospitality?
Yeah, when I arrived in Melbourne and was told about the Everleigh, I'd been excited about coming to Melbourne when I was in London. A lot of the people I was working with at Experimental Cocktail Club in London were either from New Zealand, a lot of them were from New Zealand, and a lot had spent a lot of time in our favourite New Zealanders. So I had a flavour of what I was going to experience, but when I think I managed to get into the Everleigh about 5 days after I arrived in Melbourne. Was working my way around and had some friends on the ground who gave us the tour. And the experience for me was just second to none. It was like from my world of theatre that was so exciting and inspiring to me at the time. I was really all about being taken to another world, however that was produced, whether that was in a stage show or in a bar, and going inside in the corner door on Gertrude Street, through the diner, at the time it was the diner, and up the stairs and kind of getting that waft of freshly pressed mint and the freshly squeezed ginger straight away, and the little hum of the music, getting into the foyer, like all of it just felt so incredibly transportive. And I sat at the bar incredibly nervously. I had a heads up that I was going to be able to have a chat with Michael. He was going to be working that night, and that's how he did interviews then, was just come and sit in front of me on the shift that I'm working. And he was busy, but the bar was quite busy, and I just sat and watched, ordered a drink and just sat and watched. And I can only describe it as a dance. I don't know, that was the world I was living in, but the way that the communication between the bartenders and the floor staff was just seamless. The way they were moving, the way they were holding their bodies and holding the trays and delivering the drinks, it was all just, it felt so choreographed and it felt so poised. And then the soundtrack that wasn't just the music, it was the clinking of the glasses. It was this sort of this magical atmosphere, really showed itself to me. And I drank the Kool-Aid immediately. I just thought, wow, I would love to be part of something like this.
And with the interview, how did that go? Was there any official sort of conversation that happened across the bar, or it was super casual? I'm just curious.
I think at that point, we'd probably now call it a vibe check. I think that was sussing me out. Who's this traveller girl who wants to work here? And he was quite busy, but I think that was probably quite a conscious choice to continue to make drinks and then just see what I was up to and catch me when he had a moment, and to leave me to get my impression of the bar too, right? So I think the drinks that I ordered, he was probably taking mental note of. Why does she order that? What's she expect? Does she know what that is? That kind of thing. And we had a bit of conversation from memory. I think he asked me like why I was there and what I thought of the place and how long I intended to stick around. And I didn't have a chance to interact with the floor staff at the time, but I can imagine if I was in Michael's shoes now and interviewing that person or sitting in front of that person, I think I was just wide-eyed, just like in the room, just so taken with it all. And I imagine some of that enthusiasm came through too.
Yeah. I love that. I love that way of interviewing because people let their guard down as well, so you get to see their true personality rather 100%. Than the curated interview persona.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I was more chatty after. I think I had 3 cocktails.
Yeah, probably.
More chatty towards the end, but that bit's not so memorable. Yeah.
Do you think that your theatre studies gave you a different perspective once you were working in the space?
100%. I came in with a very different level of experience to everyone who was there. And I think I'm quite content owning that now, but I was quite content owning that then. I was like, teach me everything. Teach me everything. I don't know your ways. And luckily I landed in, I think the Everleigh always had a culture of being incredibly generous with its knowledge. And I remember in my time there, lots of bartenders would come through and sit at the bar and chat to the super experienced team and ask questions. And it was like an unofficial training ground. Even if you didn't work there, you'd go in and you'd have amazing chats with the team, and they'd be very generous with their knowledge. So the team 100% took me under their wing. I think as motivated as I was to learn all about drinks, like that was really, really exciting. I was very clear from the beginning that wasn't the only thing that I wanted to learn about. I felt like I had a passion for other aspects of what I actually didn't really know that could be the career that I wanted to pave. I didn't know that was possible then. I think I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to had these ideas for these kind of immersive events, and I knew I was keeping in touch with what was going on in London at the time, and there was some really fun ideas that were playing out in site-specific, like unexpected spaces, bars popping up, in underground stations, and all things like that were in the back of my head, like, oh, this is so cool. That was still the world that I was paying attention to, even though I was not at home anymore. And I think that as I started working there and feeling more comfortable, and the team started giving me an in into how the business worked, that's when my creativity started to spark, and I felt confident enough to say, oh, hey, maybe we could try this idea. And I think where I really found my feet was when I got involved with working in the Elk Room, the space it was a function space out the back, but it hadn't been operating as a function space for very long. And Heather, one of the managers at the time, was taking a lead on running all the events in there, and she generously said, do you want to work with me on this? Do you want to come up with some event ideas? So we went from just running functions to running our own internal events program, and just got completely wildly creative with all of that, which was 1 to 2 years of just so much fun, just trying stuff out. And they all backed me and gave me a shot, and I made them do some ridiculous things like a test the bartender, challenge the bartender event, where people got to bring in their own products, and the bar had to just make whatever in front of them from a little bar cart. The guests, like, I made them do some pretty crazy things, but they went along with it, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's so exciting. And sorry, so you did test the bartender. Can you give me anything else that comes to mind that you did in terms of events?
Yeah, we did this very cool little classic cinema event called Sips on Screen. So we projected a classic movie onto the wall, and would find movies that had a lot of drinking experiences in them, and would then bring them to life by timing it precisely of when the people on screen were drinking a drink. That drink would be delivered to the guests, so that it was a shared experience. It was super fun. We had like live performers as part of it. I remember we did Goldfinger for one, and we had this incredible performer painted head to toe in gold, and she just appeared on the bar, and
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really immersive, and it was really fun, and that space was just so beautiful to work with. Everyone loved being in there, regardless of what we were doing.
Yeah, I think it's just really cool for people listening who are maybe feeling a bit uninspired, that you don't need to find your inspiration solely from hospitality. You can go outside of the industry and look at things like theatre or, I don't know, immersive events, and get some inspiration from that. Those are some really fun and cool ideas that I haven't really seen happen in many places. It's quite a unique experience, so well done to you for putting those on.
Yeah, thank you. It was so much fun to do.
Is that sort of attitude something that you've carried out throughout your career as well?
I think that I really resonate with what you're saying about taking inspiration from elsewhere. I think it can become really challenging if you become very focused in a career, in hospitality specifically, if we're very focused, you become quite competitive, and it can become easy to be looking at what's going on in rival venues alone. And that can get you quite stuck, I think, from my experience. It's obviously very important to be assessing what's going on around you and making sure that your offering measures up and your pricing measures up and all that kind of thing. But I think it's so important to creatively step outside of your field and think about how maybe unexpected routes can lead you to reinvigorate what you're doing. I think that is something that if Michael and I find ourselves in that rut of, oh, they're doing this and maybe we should be doing that kind of straight comparison point with other venues, we try to just pause and step back and look at what's going on across the entire world in the industry, not on our doorstep, but also looking in other fields. I think we're both we need a lot of aesthetic input. We're both we love pretty things. So we're constantly looking for inspiration, whether it's even from nature or from the arts. Obviously is a really easy one, but being able to draw from other aspects, I think, can give a really unexpected lens on the work that you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's amazing advice. You and Michael became partners in life as well as partners in business, right? When your lives are so deeply entangled and you've got so many businesses together, which we'll get into in a second, how do you separate that? Do you separate that, or like how do you find balance within that? Because it's a lot that you've got on the go.
100%. Yeah, I think that in the early years, I struggled with that. I think I thought that in order for us to work together and have our personal life together, we needed to be very considered about how we were going to do that and set rules and parameters of when we would talk about work and when we would not. And I think I tried that for about a year. Oh, it was so stressful. I found that we were probably not communicating the best during that time. And it was so much pressure to compartmentalize these bits of us. And ultimately, I now reflect that as soon as I let that pressure drop, things became so much easier. So, the way that I guess we're so practiced at it now that it's seamless. We will still call each other out if it's a non-work day, which we try to be a little bit more, we try to put the boundaries around that a little bit more now, like the occasional day when we go, you know what, we're completely putting the phones aside. We're going to focus on the kids, or we're going to focus on some time for ourselves. We try to be a little bit more hardline on that these days, but calling each other out to be able to say, hey, I just don't want to talk about that right now. Like, I know that's important, but I'm like in a different headspace, or let's focus on that tomorrow. We calendar time to go through stuff as well. Yes. Obviously all our meetings and things are calendared, but actually just to say, hey, we need to have a chat about that. Let's put that in tomorrow afternoon. I think I'm so grateful that we have a relationship that can cross those boundaries. And I think you have to be incredible at communicating as a couple in order to do that. But I think that's something we've mastered over time.
Yeah, it definitely takes time. My husband and I we tried to do the same thing because we were told by people that's what you should do. You separate things and you don't talk about business at the dinner table or something. It just didn't work for us. If you're working together and you've got all of this in your life, your livelihood depends on it. Sometimes that's what you want to talk about as well. So that doesn't quite work, putting those boundaries in place.
Absolutely. And that's really, for Michael and I, we have different perceptions of what work is. So for him, sometimes, and him more specifically, will say an idea will come up or a thought will come up, and that'll be something that he's so excited and passionate about that it doesn't feel like work to him. So sometimes I'll say that feels like work to me, and it can be different between the two of us, right? But as long as you can communicate through that and respect each other's like boundaries around it, I think it's absolutely doable.
Yeah, so interesting. I think it's a superpower working with your partner. If you guys can balance each other out, like how cool that you can do everything together. I think it's great.
100%. 100%. Sometimes I felt a little bit guilty on behalf of my staff who have seen us, because I think that we have such like quick communication between each other. Like sometimes it can feel we're bickering in front of staff members or something. People have a row, and I'm like, we're not rowing. This is how we communicate, but we're really quite direct with each other because we know each other really well. But yeah, sometimes on behalf of the staff, I felt that make them feel a bit uncomfortable. people.
Of course, of course. If we go back a little bit and we go back to the Everleigh, how long from the Everleigh until you opened your next business?
Yeah, so when I arrived in town, Michael he already opened the Everleigh. He'd been running for about, I can't remember how many years actually, because I'm terrible with maths. He had recently opened the Elk Room. So yeah, it had been operating for a few years already. Mm-hmm. When I got involved with the business, Michael and I probably spent about 12 months. I was working on the event side of the business, getting in touch with the Everleigh, learning the bar, and getting knee deep in everything to do with the business. Michael already had, I would say, like, he has bars and concepts in him. They are already in him. They're just like waiting to be born. And I think he would say that the dive bar was already there and the dive bar was always going to happen. But I think that the way that business was structured, it was 5 staff, including him, or 5 core staff. He wouldn't have been able to step away from that role very easily to start another business without some support. So I think it was the fact that when we made that union together, it was like, we can do anything because there's more than just you, and we're both excited and we're both passionate. And we started talking about some of these concepts and what they could look like. And I think that's how they then grew very quickly, because I feel like I was the wind in his sails, and we're very similar but also very different, and the parts of our brain that needed to matched up to make those projects viable. I think it was about 12 months until we opened Heartbreaker.
Well, that's fast. And anyone who doesn't know Heartbreaker was one of my favourite places in Melbourne when I was there. We would always shoot across, not drinking, of course. We would always shoot across on our break and like have a delicious cocktail in a dive bar, probably have a couple of shots or a beer as well, and then head back to work. It was the go-to place for everyone who worked with me just down the road. I loved it. It was so much fun.
So fun.
How was the opening of that? How did that go?
That was really hard. So that's the first bar opening that I'd done, and had no expectation of what that was going to look like. These were the days when we did everything ourselves. So we've never had any financial backers or any other partners, which I think is something that not that many people know from how much we've done. I guess the reason why it's also been challenging is because it's just been us. Every dollar that the business has made has gone back into the business. And so we were opening Heartbreaker with Michael's mum, Michael's stepdad. His sister helped with the design. She's an interior designer and works on a lot of hotels. So yeah, a handy little crew there. Michael's mum and stepdad are very hands-on and did a lot of the build of the Everleigh. So we were all hands on deck, and we had some of the staff come in the later stages. They were putting plug sockets in and painting the walls, and there was so much of that I loved the experience of, but it was truly exhausting. I think I experienced exhaustion for the first time when I did that project. I remember lying down on one of the vinyl benches and just being like, I'm broken. This is too much. Yeah, it was late nights and early mornings, and in that age where you can just go and go as well, and then to a point where you can't. But we did it very quickly. It was all done within a month, I think.
And sorry, just so we have some context, how old approximately were you when you opened Heartbreaker?
That's a really great question. 25?
I'm testing your math skills now.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, don't do that too much today.
Yeah. I'll try. 25. Okay, so super young for, like, you were in ownership of that bar at the time? Yeah. So super young to be opening your first bar, which is amazing. Did anything go like wrong during the opening?
I reckon loads of things went wrong.
Now.
Things were absolutely, so many things were not what you'd expect. We walked into what was Mai Tai restaurant, Asian restaurant come club, which was a lot. There was a lot that they had left behind that needed a lot of work. So it was really disgusting. The flowers were still on the table from their last service. I think they had to exit the business quickly. So we had to completely clear out what was and dig underneath a little bit. It was very dirty. It was a lot of work just to correct what had been done, to start a blank canvas to be able to build upon. It was, I think, it was really like the time that things were going to take and the cost restrictions, the budget restrictions that we had, that was probably the hardest thing. Going out on a whim for the first time to make bar number 2 when you're just making ends meet at bar number 1, despite its success, I think is such a big risk and such a challenge. And I think every day going through that build, it was like, God, I hope this works out. And coupled with the fact that we were opening a bar that was so different to bar number 1 that we had become known for, I think we knew that we were entering into the market with disrupting kind of people's expectations of what our second venue might be like, and going for a completely different concept. When I think about things that went wrong, I'm thinking more about our anxieties perhaps as we went through that process of what could go wrong post opening day.
Yeah, polar opposite concept to your first venue, right?
100%.
What was the state of dive bars in Melbourne at the time? Were there many? So we might be on a little bit of a different track. That'll solve all of our problems.
We've got this.
All right, let's talk about your growth as a company. So you had quite quick growth as a company, am I right? Or was it a few years until your next business?
Yeah, 2015 was a really big year. So in 2015, we opened Heartbreaker, and we also were writing a spot at the bar. So we got our first contract for our first book, which was released in 2016. So the following year, we started Navy Strength in 2015, and we started the Everleigh Bottling Co. in 2015. That's what you can do when you're
just a couple of things.
Yeah.
And were you doing this as the two of you as well, or did you have anyone that you brought into the other companies?
No, that was just us. Just us in terms of the organization and setup, but we had an amazing team. We wouldn't have been able to do that without some of the amazing teammates that we had alongside us that allowed us to step out of one business and into another. And at that point, we did have a incredibly supportive operations manager, come general manager of the business, who was a close friend. So being able to have that support to keep the day-to-day running so that we could set up these new projects was, invaluable.
That is just, I can't imagine doing all of those businesses and writing a book on top of that as well. There's so much work.
Honestly, I reflect on it and I'm like, I just don't know. I don't know how that happened. I think we were, like we were saying before, when you're really passionate and excited about something, it's not work, right? Like it wasn't, we weren't opening businesses in our heads. It wasn't like strategic moves in order to further our career. I think maybe some people are better at it. Was like, we needed ice for the Everleigh. We were making our own ice already. We needed to then provide ice to Heartbreaker, and had plans in future to try and do something else. Navy Strength was a product of needing to have that product for our own venues and wanting to do that the best way we could. And then Everleigh Bottling Co. was similar in that we had a great relationship with Broadsheet, and we're friends with Nick, who had opened a few years before, and they were doing their first Broadsheet restaurant on Gertrude Street and had asked if the Everleigh could supply cocktails for Broadsheet restaurant. And Michael and I were kind of going back and forth on it, how we were going to make that happen. And I know that he had some thoughts historically around bottled cocktails and what that would look like, and was quite interested in exploring that. And I said, well, this would be a great project to trial that in the fact that we were not willing to, we couldn't have our bartenders work at Broadsheet Kitchen for 3 months because we had 5-6 staff, and we couldn't offer the same level of consistency and wouldn't put our brand to anything that was agency bartenders or random bartenders coming in and out on different days. We needed to ensure that the consistency was there for the product. We trialled Everleigh Bottling Co. for that and had some beautiful labels designed and picked out that quite iconic little Chanel-like bottle. And it was a massive success at Broadsheet Kitchen. And that was what spurred us on to say, hey, we could make something of this.
Yeah, amazing. And is Everleigh Bottling Co. still going today?
No, we put the business to bed last year in our kind of major restructure. Post-COVID, it was a very different thing. People weren't drinking at home in the same way that they were during that brief but intense period. It needed a lot of funding to get it going again, and that was something that we just weren't able to put a focus to.
I think interestingly, probably when you started it, there wasn't quite the amount of bottled cocktails that there are on the market now. I've seen in the past, I don't know, 5-7 years, so many come out on the market, and that's a hard business to
100%.
be successful in.
Absolutely, and add to that the tax on packaged alcohol and everything else involved in
I
producing
hadn't even
it.
considered that.
It's just unreal. It's a company that all those kind of products are so. There have been so many amazing iterations come out. I think, particularly post-COVID. Obviously, we were talking about a time like way before that when we were getting established, but post-COVID, I think it was a function, obviously, of bars being able to get their drinks to people, and you have so many incredible creatives working in this space that coming up with a great looking product and being able to get the science behind making it stable, and all of that is all possible and in our remit, I think, as amazing people in this industry. But then developing a retail strategy and managing all the costs around that, it's a business that needs a lot of upfront funding, I think, in order to make it successful and in the marketing space and stuff. Yeah. Absolutely kudos to anyone who is still at it, because I know it's hard.
All right, so far you've got 4 or 5. I've lost track already. 4 or 5 businesses, 2016. From there, you've opened a few more since then as well.
From there I had my first baby in 2018. And so I was a little bit more removed from the business for a short time, as much as I could be. But Michael was offered what was a function space up the street from Heartbreaker, and it had a 24-hour license in the CBD, which is something that you don't come across very often. And I remember walking into said function space with Molly in the sling and being not taken with it, I have to say. Like looking around at these terracotta walls and these annoying pillars that were in the way everywhere that blocked you from seeing things, and being like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Why would this be interesting? And as I've seen once before, Michael's kind of eyes were just lit up. And he was like, this is where this is going to go, and this is just going to happen, and it's this. And I was like, what? And yeah, that was in his head. That was already Bar Margaux, what we called the white tile joint back then. This is going to be the white tile joint. And sure enough, they laid thousands of tiles, individual white tiles around the place, and it transformed into by far the most glamorous project we have ever done.
And with Bar Margaux, that was still funded solely by the two of you?
Yep. So the only funding we've received outside of that have been some very small, very generous loans from some of our regulars who have backed us from the beginning.
Amazing.
We want to be part of the next thing that you do, yeah. But otherwise, it was the success of Heartbreaker, and the Everleigh was going into to start number 3.
And so, can I quickly ask, when do you decide that it's a good time to open another venue? Is that because the space came up, or is it because you felt ready to open another venue? You've got obviously a young baby at that point as well. How old did you say Molly?
Molly, yeah. So we opened in 2019, so she was not yet 1 or just turning 1 when we opened Margaux.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is still very much in the weeds. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think in both instances, in opening Heartbreaker and in opening Margaux, it was opportunity arising. Like I think of it in the same way as having a child. There's no good time. Time. In a business, there's probably a better time. There are definitely there are better circumstances under which you could open a business. Heartbreak. But when a space comes up, I think it's so hard to find the right space, right? So flipping that whole concept, if you're going out saying, I'm going to open a bar this year and I've maybe got the right funding behind me, or I've got enough cash to make it happen, and I've got the right idea, but then you've got to find the right space. So I think if you're maybe like me saying before in terms of the rules around relationship and communication, like if you're too fixed with it, then that can also be a challenge. So I think we have taken opportunities as they've come to us, and for us the space feeling right and then having the right conditions around it, obviously in regards to things like the license, are enormous. So I think it's been more the fact that we haven't been able to say no to certain opportunities.
Yeah. And when did Margaux open?
Margaux opened in 2019. And yeah, so it was 9 months old, less than a year old when COVID hit.
Yeah, so like probably the worst time in a business's life cycle for COVID to happen.
100%. So I think, and that's been the hardest thing that's happened to us, was taking Margaux on and that being our most ambitious project, absolutely. And putting as much as we put into that, building what was a much bigger team than we've ever built before. It was a big space, building out a full kitchen and getting that, just starting to get that up and running and just starting to get to a point where we were being able to pay our bills off of the opening period, not even in that 9-month stage. And then having operations shut down across the board. I think that was when the biggest amount of damage was done to the businesses.
Yeah, and Melbourne had it particularly tough compared to a lot of places in the world, right? You guys were locked down for a very long time.
Yeah, God, it felt like 2 years. It was on and off there for a very long period. Even that kind of transitioning into, which we did, turned everything into a different model and scaled that differently for different businesses. Came up with at-home meals from Margaux, which was, I say, quite successful, I think, in comparison to some of the other operations that were going. It went quite well, but it didn't touch the sides in terms of the costs needed to continue running the business and keeping staff on the books and all of that kind of thing. As much as we tried to keep the wheels turning, it was such a long period of not being able to trade.
Yeah. And so Bar Margaux is no longer operating, right?
No, closed last year, yeah.
Yeah, and how did you come to the decision to wind things down?
Post 2020, things were hard. I know that they've obviously been hard for everyone across the board. This industry took a long time to recover. I think that last year when we finally made the decisions that we made, it was around how thin we had been spread for such a long time. The recognition of, I think we reevaluate how we work usually in kind of the January period as much as we can when things are quiet and you're not receiving thousands of emails. We try and take as much stock as possible to kind of go, what is it that we're setting out to do this year? What do we need personally? How are we taking care of each other? How are we taking care of our family? Who are we as people? Why are we still doing this? Like, some of the big questions come up. And I think we have been very used to moving very fast and working very hard, and we're still prepared to do, but it needs to be for the right reasons, right? And I think we were really recognizing how thin we had been spread, how exhausted how kind of under-resourced we felt, and felt the need to make some difficult decisions around what was most important. And that started with our own mental health, our own physical health, the health of our family, and then spread to what it was who we wanted to be and what we want to achieve in the next bit of our lives. And I think when we could be true to ourselves, like some of the businesses that were struggling more than others, we unfortunately had to be sacrificed in order for us to maintain a level of being okay as a couple and being okay in our professional careers and feeling like that was something sustainable.
Yeah, I hear that completely. I think a lot of people carry some shame when it comes to closing a venue or closing a business because of the fact that most people don't talk about the fact that they've closed a business and the reasons behind it, or they feel like they've done something wrong. Did you feel like you had any shame behind closing the businesses, or did it feel like a relief?
Yeah, it's by far the hardest thing we've done professionally. Coming to that decision, I liken it to an ending of a really serious relationship. You think about it for a long time before you take steps around that. So I think it's something that we had thought about for a long time, and we had pressures, accountants and other pressures to say maybe now's a good time, and we hadn't been ready previously, and we gave so much to those businesses. Like, we lived and breathed them and reinvigorated aspects of them that we thought needed changing or updating in order to try and keep them going as long as possible. But I think ultimately we also didn't want to we didn't want to see them fading. We didn't want to see them dying a slow death. It was really important that they had been so incredible and so impactful in Melbourne culture, and people had such amazing experiences in them, that if we were going to make that decision, I think we needed to boldly and bravely make it decisively and not allow for things to wither away. That was really important to us. Start cutting the team down, changing quality of things. Like, none of that was, we didn't want to compromise the experience that had been offered previously. If things were tough, we needed to make a bigger decision. And I think absolutely we felt like we were killing a child. We felt like we were absolutely getting rid of something that we loved so dearly, and that was not an easy decision to make. But ultimately we also had other businesses that deserved more attention, and I think when you know that something is right, you really feel it in your gut if you can get in touch with that. Right, that's can be quite a hard thing to do, but I think there was an element of us having a gut feeling that now it was the right time. And I guess, like, in the learning experience of it, there is so much energy that goes into something like that, into understanding what it means about you and what the business has meant about you in the past. And I think we had to put all of the kind of perception of it aside and really just stay in tune with the fact that it was the right decision for us, and therefore keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep making the right choices on the daily, and not focus on necessarily some of the bigger, broader ones that were to come, and trust in the process that if it's right for now, then it's going to be okay. And as sad as it all was,
is there anything that like decisions that you made during your growth that you look back now and you think maybe you would have done that differently?
So many. Yeah, like Michael and I were talking this morning about how I feel like we see the next generation of owner-operators being more exposed to the fact that they need to be more than just driven, creative people to open a business. And I think that our generation perhaps didn't have that in the same way. There was a lot of bartenders would open bars and give it a crack, and maybe they'd have someone along the way enter into the business or back the business that would prop it up with the financial acumen. But if they were lucky, or they just fly by the seat of their pants. Like, I think that we are, the learnings, the good thing about some of the challenges that have happened over the last few years, I think, is that the next generation are more conscious of what it requires to run a business, or they're certainly savvy enough to find out before they start doing it, or in the early stages. And I think that we when things were within our control, with the Everleigh and Heartbreaker, things felt very much within our control. And when COVID hit straight after opening Margaux, things became very much out of our control. And it's at that point, when there wasn't a lot of other layers to support us, and there wasn't the right advice or the right experience within our experience between the two of us to be able to solve some of those problems. So I think being a little bit more, it's easy to look back in hindsight, isn't it, and say, I wish you'd been more prepared. I wish you'd done the odd kind of accounting course or something, but it's not how it goes. And I think I just think now we take these learnings, and that's what kind of pushes us into a more fruitful and successful future. Like, I have no issue with the fact that we need to fall down to get back up again. It's the thing that I teach my children every day, is like, making mistakes is how you grow. You literally do not grow without making those mistakes. I've always felt that way too. I don't shy away from that. But yeah, I wish there was a few things I could have done differently, and I wish I'd had some of that intel at the time, for sure.
Yeah, same. 100%.
Yeah, right.
Hey, that was honestly the first couple of years of business for us. When we look back, and I'm like, we would have been so much more financially viable if we had actually known what we were meant to be looking at the time. It's so crazy looking back now and knowing what I know now, and how not ready I really was when I thought I would just figure it out, or I thought I knew more than I actually did.
100%.
Hey, you gave me a good little segue. You're saying that you teach your kids when they fall down to get back up. So you've got 2 kids. You've also had insanely successful and quite big hospitality career at the same time. There is not very many people that I know who have managed to make that work like females in the industry who have kids and still work in hospitality. Can you give me a little background of how you've managed to make that work?
It's a great question. I think that having children isn't easy. Running businesses isn't easy, but it's fruitful and it's rewarding and it's amazing, and that's how we evolve. So those two things are things that I would always reflect on. I feel on my deathbed and gone, thank God I did them, because that's what living's all about. The fact that we are a couple in life and in our professional careers as well, I think makes that both harder and easier. The fact that we both need to be somewhere if both kids are sick or something, we both need to not be working, but equally we're able to divide and conquer, and we talk about that a lot in being able to sub in and support each other in different spaces where I know that's not possible for a lot of family setups. Look, I think hospitality is challenging in being a parent, and hospitality is challenging in how intense the work is and how much it requires of us, and obviously the hours are an aspect, but similarly, if you can have the right support around you, we're able to be around for our kids more than a lot of other parents are in our flexibility and the way we can work together in order to create that. And we try and involve them in as much of the work that we do that's relevant as possible. Like we always had them a big part of the venues, and visiting the venues and seeing how we worked and understanding how important work was to mum and dad, I think, is not shying away that it's okay to be hardworking and it's okay to be focused on something as well as focused on your family. And I think that we have shown our kids that's really important to us, and that we're really excited by that, but that they're also a part of that, which I hope is only.
If there are people listening that are thinking about becoming mothers in the industry, is there any advice that you would give them for like how to make it work? I guess it's probably a little bit different if you're an owner or if you're an employee as well. But from your perspective, has there been anything that's been super helpful to you as a mother in the industry?
I think as a mother in, not just in the industry, but as a mother as a whole, like being able to stay connected, I think is so important. There are plenty of mums in the industry. There are plenty of mothers in hospitality, and they are doing an amazing job. I think seeking out community as a parent is so important. It really takes a village, and the more connected you feel, I think the more capable you feel in absolutely owning it and being successful and being able to continue to achieve your goals as a person and professionally. So I think maintaining connection and support and trying to find other people who are going through it, I think, is really essential. And I think you also find that other mothers know that's important, and whilst it can feel like a bit of a risk reaching out to people or trying to connect to others, like often they're very receptive, and we're all keen to learn and connect and understand how people are doing it better. I think being present when you can be present, right? Again, just as a whole, as a parent, but very much so in relation to this industry. If you're working your arse off when you're out the door, and if that means that you can't do bedtime, and that might be a really precious part of your routine with your child, you can find it somewhere else. Like being adaptable and knowing that when you are in front of them and being authentic and connecting, that's what's important. It doesn't matter if that's first thing in the morning when you're waking them up or when you're getting up post lunchtime after a late shift. I think as long as when you are there, you are really able to connect and be present, that's what they need.
I think also just not comparing yourself to other mothers, because that is just one rabbit hole I went down so far when we first had our kid. And especially if you are in hospitality, you're not going to be able to do the typical mum life probably that other people do, but there's definitely ways that you can make it work for yourself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything positive that you got from motherhood that has influenced how you are as a leader or as a businesswoman?
Is there anything positive that I got from motherhood that's influenced? Yeah, 100%. I felt very much in the early days after having my first child that I couldn't really reconnect with the person I was before I had her. I think that when I said before, these things push you to evolve, the level of evolution that happens when you have a child, or when you go through a significant life experience, there are others, is transformative. It's completely transformative. And I think that having a child allowed me to realize that what was going on for me wasn't always the most important thing in the world. And I think that's a massive, people experience that in different ways. And often it's probably around the same time that I did, I think, like end of my 20s, which is when I had my first daughter. It was like actually quite a relief that it wasn't all about me anymore.
Okay.
Because it can be quite exhausting, sort of ruminating and anxiously thinking about everything that's going on in your own head, and yourself being the main character in life. Being able to kind of park that for a second and step outside of my immediate needs or anxieties and see this bigger picture that encompassed another person who needed my care and support, but also encompassed my partner and reconnected me with like wider family, extended family. I think just saw me grow in so many ways. But ultimately, and in terms of how I connect now and lead in business, I think it allowed me to stand a little stronger and to feel a little bit more connected with the world and less caught up in this sort of anxious cycle that you can be in as a young person when you feel like there's a lot of influences from around you, perhaps pushing you to be a certain thing or making you feel like you need to do a certain thing. It made me, more grounded and connected with the world and more stable in myself in order to...
Oh, that's such a wonderful perspective to have on it as well. I had never thought about it that way, but 100% agree with you. It's so life-changing to not just be living about yourself anymore. Yeah. How cool.
It's exhausting just thinking about you. You can get really stuck there, I think.
Yeah, I think that's so true. What does success look like for you now, and how has that changed from what it used to look like when you were, let's say, 25?
I think I've never really cared about success.
Okay.
Is that the wrong answer? That might be the wrong answer. But I think in the form that maybe a lot of people do. A lot of people, perhaps, I imagine, a lot of people set out in life to achieve certain things and have goals in quite a structured way. I think I've never really worked that way. It's not how I'm geared. I think I am very in touch with how I feel and what feels good for me and what I'm excited about, and I go towards those things. And if I'm getting that sense of satisfaction and I'm feeding that aspect of myself, then that's success for me. And if I'm feeling like I'm energized and feeling good mentally, emotionally, physically because of the life that I've cultivated, that's success to me. So it's always been in quite a present way or a short-term way. I'm not really a long-term goals kind of person. And success now, I can remember a time when we were charging through, launching projects and feeling a lot of pressure for success to perhaps look a certain way, and obviously for financial success to be where it needed to be, and perceptions, I think, of other people. I think that was a big part of what success looked like for us at a time. It was winning certain awards or getting certain media placements. There was a lot of pressure when you've had a lot of that achievement to maintain that. I think I feel quite free of those sort of pressures now on the other side of the big changes that we made last year, and more in touch with how I've always been more inherently, which is to lean towards the things that make you feel good, that give us balance as a family and as a couple as well. It's still very important to me that we preserve the time that we need to and put enough energy into our personal goals as much as our professional goals. But ultimately, it looks like feeding my brain and feeding my creativity and us doing things that we absolutely love. And we make really considered choices now, I think, through the learnings that we've had over the last few years. And the challenges that we've had, it's really forced us to think twice before we take anything on. And we're doing things wholeheartedly, knowing that it's intended to be something that we're going to have a lot of enjoyment from doing, and that sort of supports the things that we're excited about and gives us a lot of joy.
Yeah, incredible. And what are you excited about?
So we have been head down in creating our new book for the last 2 years.
It looks so cool.
Yeah,
Do you
it's
want to give
unreal.
a little spiel about what the book is?
Yeah, the Madrusan Cocktail Companion came out in October, and it's a PhD in classic cocktail history. It is an absolute Bible. Oh,
Have you
sneak
got one
over
there?
here.
I love it.
She's right here. I use a lot of them to prop up my computer, but this happens to be here.
That's what you guys should buy it for.
That's what you need it for. It's a really good size. If you get two, that's ideal. You can put your computer on top of it. Also has a lot of great drinks. But essentially it was a research project that Michael has been working on for most of his career, for the last sort of 20 years, that we evolved and transformed into something that can be enjoyed by both the professional and the aspiring amateur. But it has been an incredible piece of work, delving into the history of drinks, recategorizing, reformulating all the classics together with modern drinks, and thinking about how all those families sit together. And then since we've published it, using it as a tool. Like, we've always used what was this sort of sticky document that lived under the bar at all of our venues. It's now transformed into this, but it's not just that it's been bound, it's the fact that it's really been evolved. So the piece of work that this is now is our training manual. It's the way that we introduce people to new drinks and talk about families of drinks and help people connect the dots between one and another in terms of how to make recommendations around drinks. So the life that it's just started to lead since it's been published has been amazing. I think we're inspired by our own work here in how much we think we can do with that. It's been so much work to actually get it to where it is now, and I think we're excited to see where it can go from here.
Amazing. I'll drop a link to the book in the show notes as well, so people can check it out if they want.
Awesome.
How did that compare to the first book you wrote? Just out of curiosity.
Chalk and cheese. And cheese. So the first book was what we called at the time like the coffee table book. It was really about having an extension of the Everleigh. We knew that the Everleigh was so special to people, and there were so many questions that people would come in and ask us. Where do you get your shirt stays, or how do you make your ice, and why do you use ice this way, and why do you have freshly pressed citrus? These kinds of things. It was like, I felt like we needed to package up something that was like our story and be able to extend and connect with people outside of the bar rather than just having those conversations over the bar. It was really beautiful and had a great little selection of drinks and a lot of our philosophy. I think it was the first time that we told our story and found our voice, which was an amazing journey to go on together. It took us some time in writing the book together to figure out what our collective voice was. And I think the main strength of that book is that it's incredibly approachable. It doesn't talk to you from some sort of authoritative position, even though it has so much great information in there. It's really friendly and welcoming, and was intended to be the same kind of voice you would receive in service. Yeah. So although it was a lot of work for us at that point, a very different experience to this one, which was like a real grind. It was just getting our head down in any moment that we could. And this one's post-kids, that one was pre-kids. So this was a lot harder.
Yeah. Oh, finding the time with 2 kids and businesses at the same time.
Yeah, a bit of a side project.
Yeah. You have to be very organized with your time when you've got kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about we go into some more quick-fire little fun questions to finish off? What has been for you personally the highlight of your career? Not super quick-fire, sorry.
Yeah, I know. Not when you spend too long thinking about it. The highlight. You know what? I think of some of the maybe unexpected things that we did on a bit of a whim that were just so amazing. So if I think about some of the highlights, I think about the bar bushfire shake-up that we did at the Everleigh, which was an incredible fundraiser in January 2020, when we came up with this model where we hosted 16 different Melbourne bars to come through and host like mini shifts, and we auctioned off a load of incredible prizes. We had We had, I think, Attica doing a slice out of the Connie's pizza van down the front. We had Ben Shuri
Cool.
cooking and a line around the block. Like, it was just, we raised $51,000 that night for Red Cross bushfires. And it was just the most electric, like, community driven, amazing experience. I think that's got to be one of the highlights for me.
Do you know, I just got goosebumps. That's so cool. I'm not I don't know if you can see this. That's amazing.
Honestly, you know, when just like exactly like that sort of energy is like why we all do this, right? That's what it's all about. And when people absolutely understand it and they come and they love it, and bartenders donated their time and showed their creativity, and everyone just leaned in to do something epic, and it was epic.
Amazing. Incredible. What has been, let's bring it down a notch, the low light of your career?
I think that's probably, you can probably know what I'm going to say there. Closing the businesses last year has been absolutely the hardest and lowest time, but the lows are how we know how the highs are high.
Totally. I think we've actually touched on it while we're talking today. When you did the restructure, how did that actually, what businesses did you have and what did you close?
We closed the Everleigh Bottling Co. and the Everleigh and Bar Margaux in 2025.
Yeah. So pretty, like, that's a lot in 1 year. So yeah.
Enormous.
What has been, now this can be something trivial, it doesn't need to be like something serious, but what has been the best money that you've spent?
Do you know what comes to mind for me straight away, though, is some of the branding work that we've done. There is an incredible agency that we've worked. If I think about what has strengthened our brands and our businesses and made them successful in the same way, like that has matched the energy and that we've put in, it would be the work of the brand. So working with an incredible Melbourne design agency to develop the brand and the journey that we went in, like I think that the money spent on that has probably shifted our businesses more than anything else.
Yeah, cool. Can you say, or do you want to keep them hush, who the design agency is?
No, I would shout them from the rooftops. The company you keep, TCYK, based in Collingwood. Yeah, founder Reece Gaugle is an absolute genius. And they also host loads of incredible, like, informative events and panels and stuff around design and hospitality and other industries. Like, they are so amazing.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, I hadn't heard of them, but I like that answer. Worst money that you've spent?
What's been a total waste of money? This would be like probably some of the weird gadgets that Michael's bought that haven't worked out or something. There'll definitely be like a gadget in there. I'm sure that some of the bar managers of ours would wave a hand and be like, that thing. Some of them, when you're like mad scientist mode, some things really work, some things don't. But I reckon there's been some techie gadgets that we've brought in that have just not been worth it.
It's flopped.
Yeah.
Sure. What is the most you've ever been in the weeds?
I just think to like a unexpected Monday night or something at the Everleigh when there's been maybe two of us, but I don't know, there's been some sort of party on Gertrude Street that we went across or something going on in the city and the whole place has ended up like a Friday night instead of a Monday night. It would happen fairly regularly, actually. The comparison between a weekday shift and a weeknight and a weekend shift at the Everleigh was like 2 staff to 6 or 7. So we would run it very thin during the week and 1 on the floor, 1 on the bar. So if you did end up with a full house, it was just absolute madness, just both like running around like headless chickens. So I can think about various times that's happened. It's also still a dream that I have regularly. So whenever I'm feeling stressed, it's me on the floor in the Everleigh on my own and like 200 guests have just walked in and I'm just like... It's my fever dream.
Oh no, everybody has those.
That's the worst.
Everybody has those. Is there anything that we haven't talked about today that we should have talked about?
I don't think so. I think about what I'm excited about at the moment in the evolution of the book and of our training. Like Michael and I are having a wonderful time at the moment up at LB's working with the team there, and there's an incredible team that we've hired who I'm just so proud of, like getting out of this opening period when the dust starts to settle after an opening and you can see people's faces again, not just running around through these glazed eyes, just nodding and hoping that everything's okay. Everyone started to settle in there, and so proud of that team and what they're achieving and the work we're doing there, and loving how Melbourne is embracing LBs so much. Like, it's been really cool to work with DJs for the first time in that sort of space, and music programming, and bringing together this real like multi-sensory experience alongside awesome drinks.
Thank you so much, Zara, for joining me today. I know it sounds like you are an extremely busy lady, so I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but we'll chop them out.
100%. Thank you. It's been awesome, Sarah. Thank you. Lovely to chat.